Well, hello everyone, and welcome to For the Love of Animals, a presentation of Pinellas County Animal Services and Inspiration 1110 AM. I'm your host, Len Szynski from the Pinellas County Communications Department. For the Love of Animals is a celebration of our connection and commitment to all things animal-related in the Tampa Bay area. And during the next hour, we'll be sharing with you information about the animals we love and the services and programs provided by Pinellas County Animal Services. Well, first up, there are few public health threats as concerning as the spread of rabies. A bite or scratch from an infected animal can spread this deadly viral disease from animal to animal or animal to human. It is a lethal disease, killing nearly 50,000 people and millions of animals worldwide. And with all the dogs, cats, raccoons, and people in Pinellas County, it is a very important concern to us. So with us today to tell us how Animal Services is helping to stop the spread of rabies is Rabies Investigation Coordinator Jay McGill of Pinellas County Animal Services. And it's really James, but you go by Jay.
Yes, that's correct.
So we'll honor that request here. Well, Jay, rabies, very, very important. And I know we were talking about an interesting story before the program began here about it's not so much a problem in Pinellas County now, but it was a problem not too many years ago. So tell us how some of these rabies vaccination programs began. In 1995, I understand it was a real problem.
Yeah, we had a rabies outbreak. It went pretty much from zero. We had like 30 cases in less than a year, which kicked off a program with the USDA, with the oral rabies vaccine program, and we had there was a quarantine area within Pinellas County. It went from Clearwater south to St. Petersburg. A lot of people didn't know, any animal that came into a shelter that wasn't reclaimed or didn't have proof of a current rabies vaccine was put to sleep. So we ended up putting a lot of animals to sleep,
And you did wrestle the problem to the ground, and I have to give Animal Services a lot of credit for that. A lot of people know about Animal Services as the place to go to adopt a cat or a dog, a lost dog, a found dog. They help to reunite lost pets and needy pets with new owners. But so much a part of the mission of Animal Services is to control rabies.
Yes.
And we went from 30 incidents a year to probably 0 incidents a year. When was the last time we had a rabies incident in Pinellas County?
2004, we did have a cat.
Okay.
And then 3 years ago, we did have a raccoon. Did not expose a person, but did expose someone's animal. It did test positive. So.
And you were telling us before the show that we kind of have a benefit here in Pinellas County is that we are somewhat insulated from the rest of the state of Florida. So by hammering that North County area, we can effectively control the incursion of rabies into the Pinellas County Peninsula. Yes,
it does help, but you have to remember too, there's a lot of people moving into Pinellas County from all over the country, where it could be a lot higher area where they're moving from. So it's important that everybody's animals are still vaccinated with a rabies vaccine.
Well, let's talk about that right now. It's so very, very important to have your cat and dog vaccinated, and I understand you can get a 3-year vaccine for those animals now.
Yes, as long as it's not the very first vaccine. If it's the very first vaccine, it's going to be a 1-year rabies vaccine, and after that, it will be a 3-year vaccine.
And you have to remember to keep those vaccinations current. I mean, 3 years seems like a long time initially, but it goes by, and you have to get those vaccines. You have to get them current right away.
Yeah, and it needs to be done. It is the law, and for a good reason, is to keep the public and pets safe.
Okay, tell me a little bit about the oral rabies vaccine program for Pinellas County. I understand that we initiate that about once a year to keep rabies in check and to keep, as you said, any animals that come from outside the county into the county, to keep them from spreading rabies. How does that work? How does that program work?
Well, basically, the oral rabies vaccine is a partnership with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and they actually sent out small baits, their fish meal, and inside the fish meal is a rabies vaccine. It's mainly used to keep the raccoons in check.
So how many of those are spread out throughout the area?
I would say up to 10,000.
Up to 10,000.
It just really depends.
In wooded areas and neighborhood areas?
Everywhere.
Pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, and they'll usually notify the neighborhoods, what's going on in case somebody's pets eats it or something like that.
And when the raccoon gets a hold of this little tidbit, there's a capsule inside with a rabies vaccine, so the raccoon becomes vaccinated.
Yes.
Now, if your dog or cat eats that, would they become vaccinated, or does that not work with dogs and cats?
It wouldn't be the same. It won't hurt the dog, but the dog still needs to be an injection, a rabies injection.
Are raccoons the biggest threat, the biggest carrier that we have of rabies in Pinellas County?
Actually, I would say second to the bat.
Okay, the bat?
Yes,
all right.
Bats are very, very high-risk carriers.
And I would imagine the bats might bite a raccoon or a dog or even a horse, perhaps?
Or possible. A lot of people wake up and they're flying around their house.
Oh, my goodness.
So we'll treat that as an exposure. We'll actually pick up the bat and send it out for testing.
I mean, we talk about the fact that Pinellas County is the most densely populated county in Florida. It's very metropolitan, very dense, but yet there are a lot of wild animals in Pinellas County.
Yeah,
right next door to all these people.
They don't really have anywhere to go.
Yeah.
So they like to move into people's attics and underneath their houses.
How easily can a dog or cat pick up rabies from a wild animal?
If the actual host animal is shedding the virus, that's when it can be passed on to people and animals. If a dog or a cat is exposed to a possible rabid animal, if we don't have the animal available for testing, then their pet is going to be quarantined.
Now, if it's vaccinated, though, when we have the papers to prove it, does that kind of spare the animal's life?
No. Well, the animal, you mean the
dog or the cat?
We don't put them to sleep. All we're going to do is quarantine the animal. If someone's dog is attacked by a raccoon and the dog has a current rabies vaccination, we're going to give them another vaccine.
Okay.
And just to booster it, and then they're going to be put on a 45-day quarantine at home with the owners.
So just to make sure that animal doesn't get sick.
Yeah, because the rabies vaccine, it makes it low risk, but it does not make it no risk.
Oh, okay.
So an animal can still come down with the rabies vaccine even with a current rabies shot.
So keep your cats inside, keep your dogs on a leash, don't let them run wild.
That's the best thing you can do.
What are the telltale signs of an affected animal? If I see a raccoon or a squirrel or a ferret or an opossum, how can I tell if the animal is rabid or not?
In the early stages, they're going to become lethargic. They're going to stop eating and drinking. Sometimes they'll start walking in circles, falling over. And then in the later stages is when what they call vicious rabies is when they'll start acting out and attacking stuff.
But it's a good rule of thumb, just leave wild animals alone.
Correct.
A lot of people, they see a small animal like a baby squirrel or a baby raccoon, they want to take it in and take care of it. Or if they see an injured animal, they want to take care of it. But your advice is to just leave those animals alone.
Yeah, just stay away from them and just call your, wildlife rescue or somebody to come pick it up for you.
If I get bit or scratched by a wild animal, what should I do?
You should contact Pinellas County Animal Services and report it, and then you need to contact your doctor.
And what happens after that? If I report it to you all, do you go try to look for the animal as I describe it?
It depends on the circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have eyes on the animal the whole time,
okay,
then you're not going to know if it's the same animal that bit you. Like if somebody's dog gets out and gets in a fight with a raccoon and the dog kills the raccoon and the raccoon's there, then we know it's the same raccoon. But if someone's outside taking their trash out and they get bit by a raccoon and then they go back in the house and the raccoon's not there any longer, I mean, you can set a trap out, but you're never going to know if it's the same raccoon or not.
So I don't know if I have rabies or not at this point in time.
Well, then you're going to contact your doctor, or you're going to go to the emergency room and they're going to start you on post-exposure treatment.
In the movies, this is very dramatic when that happens. Somebody gets bit by an animal and they have to undergo rabies treatments. Is it better than perhaps it used to be? What is the treatment for rabies, medically speaking?
What you're going to get is there's going to be a series of 4 shots, day 1, day 3, day 7, and day 14. The first day, they're actually going to give you an exposure vaccine and also hemoglobin, which they use to infiltrate the wound. And then after the first day, it's just going to be the vaccine that they're going to give you, and it's usually in the arm. So it's not very painful. It's just like any other.
Okay, so it's
vaccine.
just something I have to go through.
Yes.
Can I be vaccinated for rabies? Is there a human rabies vaccine?
There's pre-exposure vaccines, but if you're bit by an animal, they're still going to give you the post-exposure.
Okay.
Yeah, it would just help. It would make the risk lower that you're actually going to contract the virus, but you still can contract it. And one of the big issues that people understand is once you start showing signs, there's no treatment for it. It's fatal.
So I can't wait to see what happens. I
Correct.
have to take corrective measures right away.
Yeah, because you don't know. Once you start showing signs, there's no cure for it.
So it's very serious. Rabies is very serious.
It's fatal. It's it's nothing to play with, and it is fatal to humans.
So once again, thank you to Animal Services for having this oral rabies vaccine program every year. That certainly keeps things in check. But nonetheless, stay away from those wild animals.
Yes, you definitely need to stay away from them. Leave them alone. Make sure you don't have any garbage outside, dog, cat food outside, it's going to attract them to your area.
And don't feed them in the park. People think it's cute to feed squirrels in the park or raccoons at Fort DeSoto Park, but then they lose their fear of human beings, and they're everywhere, and you don't know if they're safe or not to be around.
Correct. And then you show up without food, and they want some food, so they're going to come.
And they get very insistent.
Yeah,
they'll go find their own food inside your tent.
Correct.
Oh, my goodness. All right. Well, I'd like to thank my guest on this part of the program, Jay McGill, Rabies Investigation Coordinator with Pinellas County Animal Services. And we would encourage our listeners, if you have any comments or questions on anything we've talked about on this program, send us an email. Send it to animals@pinellascounty.org, and we'll share your concerns on a future edition of For the Love of Animals. Well, coming up after the break, Dr. Caroline from Pinellas County Animal Services talks to us about healthy food for your pet. Stay with us. And we're back. Welcome back to For the Love of Animals, a presentation of Pinellas County Animal Services and Inspiration 1110 AM. I'm Len Szynski with the Pinellas County Communications Department. You know, pets will eat just about anything, or so it would seem. But in order to keep them healthy, a pet's diet is as important decision for us as pet owners. We buy the food and the treats, we fill their bowls, so it's up to us to keep our pets healthy with healthy food choices. With me today to share some advice on the subject is Dr. Caroline, Director of Veterinary Services for Pinellas County Animal Services. And Dr. Caroline, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Len?
I'm good. Lunch is coming up, so food is on our minds.
Oh, yes.
So, and every trip to the grocery store, of course, if we have a pet at home, food is some food goes in the grocery basket for them as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we don't really think about food all that much, I think. Certainly those of us that have dogs know that they're voracious no matter what we put in their food bowl. But is there better kinds of dog food? And I wanted to ask you this. You know, when you go to the grocery store, there's a lot of popular brands. When you go to the pet store, there are some more expensive brands, maybe more sophisticated mixes. When you go to the veterinarian, they have their own brands of dog foods. And, of course, each outlet says that theirs is superior. What's the best store-bought food that you can get for your dog?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, Len. And just like we find with human diet and health, is things change quite frequently about what's recommended. You could get a bunch of different human experts on nutrition in this room, and they could all recommend a completely dramatically different diet. And we could do the same if we got, 20 experts on veterinary nutrition in the room and, started talking about dog foods.
Now, we're supposed to have answers for our listeners.
I know. I'm getting there.
All right.
I think that the number one thing we need to make sure of with our dog and cat food is that on the bag it says it meets AAFCO feeding trials.
Okay.
And AAFCO is the organization in the United States that evaluates food. And what it means when a food has met the AAFCO feeding trials standard is that the pet food maker has fed it to animals over time to make sure that those animals do well and they thrive and they don't develop any deficiencies or any nutritional problems from that food. And not every food out there has that seal of approval on it. So I think that's the number one thing that you need to look for with your pet's food.
All right, say that again for people that may have missed it just the
so
first
that's
time around.
AAFCO feeding trials. AAFCO.
AFFCO?
AAFCO.
Oh, all right. AAFCO.
And it has to have met the AAFCO feeding trial standards. And that's going to be a little seal that's going to be right there on the bag. And so that's the number one thing to look for in your pet food. Then, I think a lot of it comes down to what's your budget for pet food. Because there's a lot of really good, pet foods at all different budget levels. Just like we have with human foods, we can go to Whole Foods Market and get all organic if we have a lot of money to spend. Or if we're more of a budget shopper, we can go to Save a Lot and we can get something that's much more affordable. Either way, we can get a good quality diet.
Now, is it all marketing? Are they marketing these pet foods to the pet owner more than they are to the dog or cat?
I think, oh yes. And what you find is with most of the foods, they're palatable or they taste good to the dogs or cats. What they're really doing is they're marketing it more to the owner. Now, what you find is typically the more money you spend on the food, the higher the quality of ingredients. And so that's something to keep in mind. And so if you're able to afford it, going with a more premium dog or cat food can be beneficial.
So what else should we be looking for on the label?
Well, when you're looking at that label, also making sure that you match the food with your pet's life stage. So we want to feed puppies puppy food, and adult dogs adult food, and senior dogs senior food, and then they have a whole bunch of other varieties. You know, if your cat has hairballs, there are hairball formulas. If they're overweight, there's overweight formulas. So picking something that matches your pet's lifestyle, and then picking something that your pet likes to eat. And every pet is a little bit different in what they like. Also taking your veterinarian's recommendation into effect with that, because some pets need to be on a prescription diet due to health concerns. And so if your veterinarian recommends a prescription diet, and a lot of the common reasons would be urinary tract issues, or we can see with skin issues or kidney or heart disease, you want to make sure that you're feeding that food, that prescription food, because an over-the-counter food just isn't going to do it for your pet.
Wow, it sounds like there are a lot of choices that you have to make, and some of them are very confusing.
They are, and they're even confusing sometimes for me as a veterinary professional, and I'm not afraid to admit that. It's really overwhelming. There's so many different foods and food makers, and they pop up all the time. You can't really, keep track. So it's about finding something that your pet tolerates well. Just like people, some pets don't tolerate certain foods. I know that I don't tolerate dairy very well, so I need to avoid dairy. And some pets don't tolerate dairy well either. And so you may find that there's certain ingredients that your pet can't handle.
Doing some research for this interview, I read a thing online that said that cats don't really like milk. A lot of cats can't tolerate milk.
They don't. And a lot of times it'll cause upset stomach, or even worse, a stench from the litter box from diarrhea.
Ooh.
So definitely want to avoid cow's milk. I know that's the classic thing to give cats to drink, and it's really not good for them.
Should we feed our animals a variety of foods? It sounds like there's such a process to get a food that's good for them, that tastes good. Once we find that, should we just give them that food every single day, or do they appreciate a variety?
I recommend sticking with the same food, because every time we transition from one food to another, we can upset our pet's stomach, and we can cause vomiting or soft stool. And sometimes that can last for several days, sometimes even a week or more. Sometimes we can even get some blood in the stool or mucus in the stool from a diet change. So I recommend finding something you like and sticking with it. One of the other things that we find is very challenging with pet food is how much do we feed?
Indeed.
And overall, we feed a lot. Your pets really shouldn't have food down all the time, because they're going to overeat. And I bet if most of us went home right now and we looked at our bag of pet food and we saw on the back they're going to have a chart, and it's going to tell you how much to feed based on how much your pet weighs or what your pet's ideal weight should be if you're shooting for weight loss. We're probably way overfeeding our pet. So one of the best things we can do is get a measuring cup, just like you'd use in the kitchen, and measure out that food for your pet, and don't feed any more than that. And one of the things you can run into is if you switch from one food to another, the amount that you're feeding can be different. And so that can be confusing for you and confusing for your pet as well. If they're eating one food where they get to eat some more of it because it's not as nutrient dense, and we switch to something that's very, very dense and they only get a little bit, that can be stressful for them, that change.
Well, I think it's so difficult to make that determination just by judging by what the animal behavior is, because no matter how much food you give your dog, he's ravenous.
Well, and I know for me, regardless of how much food I eat, I'm ravenous. And, I can't eat as much as I'd like to
More
maintain,
pizza, please.
to maintain a weight that I need to. And
sure.
our pets are the same way, and they're not cognitive enough to understand that maybe they need to have a little bit of moderation.
All right. What about people food? People cannot resist giving their dog scraps from the table.
They can't.
What do you do about that? It's not a good practice.
It's not a good practice. But that being said, people are going to do it. So if you're out there and you are giving your dog table scraps, here are a few things I would keep in mind. Make sure that you're not giving things like pieces of fat or bones. Both of those can really, especially really, really fatty things, can cause stomach upset with the dogs, and sometimes inflame the pancreas, which can be very severe. So we want to stay away from that. Bones can potentially pose a choking hazard, so we want to avoid those as well.
Now wait a minute. Dogs and bones, that goes back in literature and folklore. A dog and his bone is sacrosanct. Are you going to take the bones away from the dogs?
And I'm not necessarily saying that you take all bones away from dogs, but definitely bones off the table, and our poultry bones, so chicken, turkey bones, those bones will splinter. They can cause the dog a ton of issues as far as cutting up the esophagus and stomach. So those absolutely should be avoided. Other bones, I just say use with caution. Any bone that the dog can bite into pieces and ingest parts of, that can cut down the intestinal tract, and sometimes those can even get stopped up in the intestine. So think of it like a pipe that gets a blockage. Well, if we get a blockage from bones in there, that's emergency surgery, and you're looking at thousands of dollars to fix your dog. So you can have the greatest of intentions and, end up at the emergency clinic with a dog that's really critical.
Can I make my own food for my dog?
You can. And some owners choose to do that, just like they choose to make it for themselves. That's something you definitely want to consult with your veterinarian, because we want to make sure that we've got the right mixtures of protein and carbohydrate and fruits and vegetables for your dog, and also that they're on a multivitamin supplement. When we feed commercially made dog food, all their vitamins and minerals and everything they need is in there in balance, so we don't have to think about it. Now when we start cooking for our dogs, we really have to put a lot of thought into that, so we want to make sure that we're well educated, and your veterinarian's going to be your best resource for that.
What about a vegetarian diet for dogs and cats? There are a lot of vegetarian people out there, and they want their dogs to eat the same way. Would a vegetarian diet be lacking in certain elements?
It absolutely would for cats. Cats are carnivores, and so cats need meat in their diet. So to put a cat on a vegetarian diet is not recommended, and that's not in the best interest of their health. Dogs, on the other hand, are omnivores. I still recommend having meat in their diet, because in the wild they do have meat in their diet, so I think that's important. It's possible that you could have them on a vegetarian diet, but that really takes a lot of thought and effort to make sure they're getting plenty of protein.
All right, Dr. Caroline, I will meet you in the food department of our pet store here. You have your basket ready.
I will. Thanks, Len.
I'd like to thank my guest this time around on For the Love of Animals, Dr. Caroline. She's Director of Veterinary Services for Pinellas County Animal Services. Remember, if you have a question for Dr. Caroline, simply email it to us at animals@pinellascounty.org, and we'll have the answer for you on an upcoming edition of For the Love of Animals. Well, coming up after the break, we'll find out more about the pets we love and some of the important programs provided by Pinellas County Animal Services. You stay with us. Welcome back to For the Love of Animals. I'm Len Szynski from the Pinellas County Communications Department. Volunteers are important to animal services, to both the staff and the animals, as people from the community give their time to perform some of the everyday tasks that are so important in the care and treatment of animals. Well, with me today is one volunteer who spends a lot of time on the road, assisting the animal control officers as they make their rounds around Pinellas County. We say hello to Roger Hambridge. Roger, hello.
Hi.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good to have you on the program. And, once again, you're one of a number of volunteers that are so very important to animal services, and we're very, very glad to get this opportunity to talk with you. And you have a somewhat unique volunteer position.
Yeah, I ride out on the road.
You ride out on the road. Well, first of all, how long have you been a volunteer with Animal Services?
A little over a year now.
Okay, so you've gotten your feet wet and you know the routine.
Right.
How often, like how many times a week do you go volunteer there?
Well, when I have classes, it's generally once a week, but now that classes are out for the summer, I usually go 2-3 times a week.
Okay, that's great. And it says here that you're working your way through St. Pete College?
Well, USF.
Oh, USF.
Right now.
All
yeah,
right.
USF in St. Pete.
Okay, good. You're a graduate of Largo High School, so you're a local boy living in Pinellas County since you were 13 years old, it says here.
Yes, that's correct.
So you know the layout of the land pretty well and know where you're going when you go out with the animal control officers.
Right.
Describe your typical day for me.
Well, typical day, you get in, you have the meeting in the morning, then go out on the road. You do the important calls as quickly as you can.
What time does your day begin?
Usually try to get out on the road by 7:30.
Okay, so it's a full shift. You go out with the animal control officer. It's a full shift.
Yeah, 7:30 to you go in at say around 4 o'clock, and then you got to get the animals unloaded and put in the
And what
kennels
sort of
and
a incident might you respond to? Like what happened the last time that you volunteered? Where did you go?
Well, yesterday I was in Zone 1 and 2, South County, and there were a lot of police calls yesterday.
Oh, really?
Yeah, nothing bad.
Is this like a dog bite situation, or?
No, not yesterday, but I did. The officer and I did respond to one that was an abandoned animal.
Okay.
That the officer was there, and
because we get a lot of complaints that I know Animal Services responds to. Abandoned animals is one thing, people leaving their homes and just leaving the dog or cat there in the house. As despicable as that seems, people do that. A lot of dog bites. Do you respond to a lot of dog bites and dog barking calls? Or what's the most common incident that you would be responding to?
The most common lately that we respond to are dog or cat pickups right now, because it is really the season for kittens. So a lot of times there are a lot of cat pickups.
So somebody
this time
sees
of year.
a feral cat in the neighborhood, or
Yeah,
a
and
loose
they'll
dog running around.
trap it, or with the cats they'll trap it and then or confine it and we'll go pick it up.
Yeah. How much territory do you cover? Is it all of Pinellas
All
County?
of Pinellas County.
Wow, from Tarpon Springs to Fort DeSoto Park,
That is correct.
you're out there with them. Well, that's great. And when the animal officer responds to an incident, you said a lot of lost dogs or a lot of lost cats. What do you do to assist him now? How do you work with them?
With the officer?
Yeah.
I'll help out with the paperwork, or at times I'll also get the animal from the trap, or like yesterday I chased down a dog.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Did you catch him?
Yes.
Oh, that's great, because those dogs are pretty speedy.
Oh, he was tired out. Had an injury in her neck. So
You know, the animal control, because of the way the staffing is organized, they go out with those trucks, and people have seen those trucks with all the ventilation on the side.
yes, they are
and
hard to
everything.
miss.
They go out by themselves. You know, they
Correct.
have to. And some of these incidents with a dog or a cat, I mean, these are frisky animals, and I would imagine sometimes you absolutely need another pair of hands.
Yes, it does help, like with chasing the dog yesterday, because I could be out on the road running after it, and the officer and the police officer could kind of corral it to
Sure.
go towards me. So it is a lot easier.
Any wild animals? Do you respond to any alligator calls? You know, those always make the headlines when there's an alligator loose somewhere.
Right. Usually, as far as I'm aware, the animal services doesn't respond to those, because as of now, there aren't a lot of officers
Sure.
on the road, and a lot of times, from what I've seen, is they advise the complainant to call a trapper, a wildlife
or
trapper.
sometimes the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission gets involved.
Yeah, that
with
could be
as well,
possible
yeah.
also.
But I know sometimes people will call animal services for anything, you know, any kind of an animal, and you
That
get a
is
call
true.
and you get a complaint, and sometimes you go out and respond, and it's just kind of unusual. You don't know what you're going to come up against when you go out to one of those calls. How many animals do you actually pick up in the course of your shift? How many are back in the truck when you come back to animal services?
It depends on the day. Sometimes you don't have any animals, and other times you've got 10 to 14 or more.
And what happens when you come back to the shop?
Well, you have to unload the animals and give them their shots and vaccines, and then put them up. And if they have any injuries, you might want to bring them to the hospital to have the vets or the vet techs look at the animal.
And do you help with all of this, the processing?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Because I know it's a big job, and you've got to get it all done by the end of the day. Is it hard work? I mean, is it physically demanding work, riding with those animal control officers, the work that they do? It's hot, you know, it's hot outside. You spend a lot of time running around after animals. Is it physically demanding that way?
Yeah, I would say it is, especially sometimes you get like 100 or more pound dog, and you have to lift them up to put them in the kennel on the back. So I would say it is physically demanding, or running and things like that.
You know, they work very, very hard, our animal control officers, along with police, fire departments, EMS personnel. You know, they're all heroes, and they perform a very vital function in the community. Does the public appreciate the work that the animal control officers do? Are they taken for granted, or do people not know the kind of jobs that they have to perform when they go outside?
That's a good question. I think that animal services kind of has a bad reputation.
Oh, really?
Like they're misunderstood, because
Like the old dog catcher from the Little Rascals?
the old
you know?
dog catcher, and then if you pick up the animal, you automatically put it to sleep, which is what the county.
And they don't do that, of course. We try to find new homes
Exactly.
for these animals.
We do the
Yeah.
best
Well,
we
let's
can.
educate the public a little bit, Roger, because you know what you're talking about here. You spend a lot of time with these people. And what's the one thing that the public doesn't know that they should know about animal control?
Well, I think they should know that with animal control, we're going to do the best that we can for the animal. We're going to pick the animal up, do what we can to take care of it, and then do the best to get it adopted.
Sure, yeah. And that's the mission. That's all you can do.
Correct.
You know, these animals, through no fault of their own, are sometimes in horrible situations, and we have to rescue them and try to find happy lives for them, and that's where they work.
Right.
Absolutely. Do you have animals of your own at home?
I do. I have a dog and a cat.
A dog and a cat. Now, so many people, when they volunteer for animal services, they start out with a dog and a cat. Maybe they wind up with 2 dogs and 3 cats.
Oh.
Any chances of you expanding your animal family?
At the moment, no.
Oh, no? Really? Okay.
Yeah, my dogs are both old. Or
Okay.
my dog is old and my cat's also old. And
Yeah.
I think either bringing a young puppy might wear him out, or could get sick from the animal, so I don't really want to risk it yet.
Now, as a volunteer, how many other kinds of jobs do they have for volunteers at Animal Services? And what made you decide to join up with Animal Services in the first place a year ago? How did you get interested in this sort of thing in the first place?
Well, I was it's getting close for me to be graduating. I have one semester left, and I really, I liked animals and figured I'd volunteer to see if it would be something I'd like to do after I graduated. Mm-hmm. And, get my foot in the door and see how things worked out.
So might this be a career for you when you get through school?
It's possible. I definitely won't say no.
Yeah, because I know people love the work. It's hard work, as we've talked about. But as we've also talked about, it's worthy work. And, these animals, they can't speak for themselves. They can't fight for themselves. They need human beings like those that work for Animal Services to be on their side and to help them out in need. You were going to tell me about some of the other jobs that volunteers might enjoy doing?
Okay, well, there are the animal like the dog walkers.
Oh, yeah, we've had those people on the show before. It sounds like a fun job.
Yeah, it's fun. You walk the dogs around, meet them, play with them. There's also people who go up there with the cats. They kind of sit in front with the cats, I guess, pet or play with the cats. Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah, and then I also believe that you can volunteer as like an office staff position and...
If you love animals, it's the place to go. It's for a volunteer opportunity.
Yeah, that is correct.
Well, Roger, thank you very much. I'd like to thank my guest this time around, Roger Hambridge, volunteer at Pinellas County Animal Services. And if anyone in our broadcast audience is interested in volunteering their time at Pinellas County Animal Services, complete information is on the Animal Services website. That's at pinellascounty.org/animal services, one word. Just scroll down when you get there and hit volunteer. Or you can just send us an email at animals@pinellascounty.org. Well, coming up after the break, we go to the mailbag to answer some of your questions about cats and dogs when we come back. Welcome back to For the Love of Animals, a presentation of Pinellas County Animal Services and Inspiration 1110 AM. I'm your host, Len Szynski, and joining me right now is John Hohenstern, Senior Animal Control Officer with Pinellas County Animal Services. And John, how are you today?
Oh, pretty good, Len. How are you?
I'm good. We're in the mailbag section of today's program, and I've got a couple of unrelated questions here, but I thought we might talk about them. Okay. This is what's coming in. This is what's on people's minds. So let's get right to the mailbag here. Tracy from Clearwater sends us a question. She says, I was looking for information on mobile microchipping in the countryside area and the costs. Also, one of our puppies was microchipped at our vet, and we were not told that there was an annual fee. We were told that only some services require an annual fee, and if you do not, could he be chipped a second time? Not sure what she means by that. But the point is, talking about microchipping, I mean, all dogs require to have licenses, and the dog tags kind of connect with that. But now microchipping is a 21st century way of identifying the animal. So how does that work?
Right, because an animal can lose its collar or its license.
Sure.
But you can't lose a microchip. And every dog or cat that we impound is scanned multiple times, once by the officer in the field, if it's in the field, once coming in through the front door, and then just about any time anyone has anything to do with the animal during the examination process, it's scanned just to make sure, we didn't miss a microchip so we can get them back home.
And what sort of information is in that microchip?
It's just a number.
Oh.
It's just a little pill-looking thing that's about the size of a grain of rice. Mm-hmm. And when the scanner hits it, it emits a number that the scanner picks up, and then we can put that number into our system if it is in our system, and hopefully it is, and we can call the owner and tell them they need to come down to the shelter and pick up their animal. Or if it's not in the system, what we do is call the microchip manufacturer and say, hey, we picked up a dog or cat with this number. Can you tell us who it's registered to? And I hate to say it, but more times than not, the information that the chip company has is not accurate.
Sure, yeah.
Because people don't update their information, they move, or, just like this gal said that she didn't know, some people don't know that they need to register all their information. They think when they get the dog from the pet store or whatever, that they do all that for them, but they don't.
Well, that's my question to you. If I get a dog and I put the microchip in, to whom do I give my information?
Okay, well, if you get your dog from us,
Okay.
it'll be automatically in our system. And we don't charge an annual fee.
Okay.
Once the number's in, it's in. With the tag for life that we have now. One pet will have one license and one registration file for the life of the pet. So once the microchip is added to that number is in our system, we'll run the number and say, oh yeah, okay, we know exactly where he belongs.
And if I move, of course, it's up to me to notify you all to update your database.
All right, absolutely.
Do you share that information with other agencies? If I'm on vacation and something happens to the dog, it gets loose, will the microchip work in Chicago?
Well, it will if we get a call from someone or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually a license tag, though, because people take their pets on vacation, and they call our number because it's right there on the license, and they say, "You won't believe this, but I found this dog, in Chicago," and we'll give them the owner's name and phone number and say, well, this is the information we have on file, and hopefully they're up there somewhere because everybody pretty much uses their cell phone number now.
So it may not be a perfect system, but certainly it works well with a registered dog license. It's another way of establishing the identity of that animal.
Oh, absolutely. And as long as the information is kept up to date, because that's got to be the saddest thing in the world when you find that microchip number and you think, oh, good, this dog can go home. And it can't because it's still registered to, the Pet Safari or wherever.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Well, speaking of pet stores, I have another email here from Rebecca from Clearwater. She says she went to a pet store. We're not going to mention which one. But she was shocked at the conditions the animals were in. There were no heating lamps on any of the snakes or lizards. They were in complete darkness, while the tarantulas, who don't like lights, had lights on them. So that's a pretty egregious offense there. There were puppies covered with fleas and wire cages. There were bird cages with birds held up by flimsy cardboard boxes in the middle of the aisles. There was trash and wires all over the floor. The fish tanks were dirty. Well, a lot of complaints about this one particular pet store. Do you get those kind of complaints, and do you respond to those kind of complaints?
Well, yes, we do. Primarily, we deal with the dogs and the cats.
Sure.
Everything else or whatever is kind of a USDA related,
Okay.
Or maybe even Florida Fish and Game, depending on, what kind of species of snake it might be or whatever. But we take every complaint, and even if it really doesn't fall into our purview, I mean, animal cruelty is, animal cruelty. If they don't have food, water, shelter, they're not being adequately taken care of. But a lot of times, sometimes pet stores open up before they have a chance to clean up. I mean, I hate to say it, but if you were to come through animal services at 7 o'clock, when we first get there, there's a lot, there's a mess to be cleaned up because you're dealing with living things that need to go
animals,
to
animals are messy. Let's face it.
Food and water disappear and other things appear, and you need to clean them up. And a lot of times pet stores, they'll open up their doors, before they have a chance to clean everything up from the day before. And a lot of the times that's what we see. It's very rare that we will see, a pet store that's open for business that's, got, something that's that egregious.
That's good to know that dirty and messy doesn't necessarily constitute abuse in the pet store. And by and large, pet stores, and I know we partner with a number of pet stores in the area, they're very professional, run by professional staff, run by people that love animals as much as we do.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the whole, cat adoption program or whatever, it wouldn't be for the local pet stores or whatever. I mean, we adopt more cats out of the pet stores than we do out of animal services.
I know. So, and all of those pets, there are a few bad apples out there. For the most part, you get a good animal when you go to a reputable pet store.
Oh, absolutely.
All right, another question here from Ed in Gulfport. He says, we have coyotes prowling around the neighborhood. He says this entire area of Gulfport is being bothered every night by coyotes. There appear to be two large ones, one smaller one. Gulfport is a small doggy and small pet town, he says here, and we are very concerned. Coyotes are everywhere in Pinellas County.
Yeah, they are.
Are there other pockets of coyotes that are more dense maybe than others?
It could be. It depends on, coyotes are after a food source. And if they know that there is a food source, unsecured garbage, if somebody's feeding their dog or cat outside in their backyard, or if their dog or cat, small dog or cat, is outside in the backyard unattended, coyotes consider them a food source as well.
Will they hop the fence or?
They can. The Wile E. Coyote, it's kind of a joke or whatever, but yeah, they are very resourceful.
Do they feed more at night than in the daytime, or?
I think they're starting to adapt to our urban environment.
Okay.
I think if they know that, the free meal that they can get is on, trash day Tuesday after, 8 o'clock when everybody puts their trash out, that's when they're going to be out knocking over trash cans.
Because they look pretty brash, I've seen them on the street corner in Bel Air, of all places, by the golf course there, and they're just kind of very nonchalant.
Yeah.
They seem to look like they feel right at home in our urban environment.
Yeah, people need to make them feel unwelcome.
And how do you do that? I was going to ask you, if I should encounter a coyote, number one, what is the danger to me? Should I be running like the Dickens the other way?
No.
Or what should I do?
Well, for the most part, coyotes are shy creatures. They don't like attention. They don't like noise.
Mm-hmm.
So, they say, clap your hands, raise your hands in the air, shout, hey, even throw rocks. They just don't like attention.
Okay.
And, most of the coyote sightings that we get, just even off the website I saw him walking down the road and he just kept walking.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's what we want him to do. That's really not he's not a problem coyote. He's keeping himself to himself and he's going.
But they're pretty big animals, coyotes are.
Well,
where do they
get
live?
big, like
Where do they
30,
build
40
their
pounds,
nest?
wherever they can.
Wow.
They found a den of pups in the old Biltmore Hotel
I
there,
read
or
about
whatever.
that,
when they were going through it. So, they're very opportunistic. It could be in a wooded area. It might be, on the side of the abandoned house, two houses down that's foreclosed on. They're very resourceful.
Can you trap them? People want you to trap them and get rid of them. Can you do that?
Well, you need to have a special kind of trap to do that, and people are welcome to hire a wildlife trapper or rehabber to get that to happen. But in in an average dog trap like we use for dogs, no, you're not going to catch a coyote.
Yeah.
And we have tried repeatedly.
Okay, so leave them alone for the most part, or scare them away if you can.
Make noise, make them feel uncomfortable. That's it.
They must hate 4th of July then.
Oh, I'm sure they will.
Actually, 4th of July is past. So let's get on with another letter real quick here from St. Petersburg. Donald has lost his dog. He says the dog got out of the backyard on Thursday, and he doesn't know what to do. If somebody loses a dog, what are the chances of that dog winding up at Animal Services?
I'd say the chances are pretty good.
Really? Yeah?
Yes. We pick up animals on the road every day. People bring them into us. Even people will call in, and if it's a nice dog or cat, they usually hold on to them and give us what we call a found animal report that we stick in a book in our lobby then. So when the owners do come through looking for their own lost pet, they can say, oh, that's right around the corner from my house, and that sounds exactly like my dog.
Yeah.
They can give them a call and get their dog
So
back.
check
or whatever.
with Animal Services first of all.
Yeah.
All
You
right.
need to check with us, but, like we were on before, microchip, license,
sure.
have some sort of positive ID. We get all kinds of calls every day just like this. Hey, my dog got out, my cat got out. No, it doesn't have a license. No, it doesn't have a microchip. Well, unless there's something really unique about that animal, we have hundreds.
Certainly the dogs and cats can't talk.
I could walk through the kennel and come up with 3 black labs and none of them be your black lab. I don't know. So, people get a little upset when we say, well, without any absolute positive ID, the only way we know if your dog is here, you need to come and walk through the shelter and take a look at everybody.
Yeah. So being a responsible pet owner is paramount overall.
Oh, absolutely. And I know if my dog got out, I would be down at the shelter every day.
Absolutely. All right, John. Well, thank you very much. That brings us to the end of our program. I want to thank our guest once again, John Hohenstern, Senior Animal Control Officer with Pinellas County Animal Services. You have been listening to For the Love of Animals, presented by Pinellas County Animal Services and Inspiration 1110 a.m. Be sure to be with us next Saturday, 11 a.m. till noon, right here on Inspiration 1110 a.m. for another episode of For the Love of Animals. And if you have any questions or comments on anything we've talked about on the program, just send us an email at animals@pinellascounty.org or give us a call at 582-2600. For more information on Pinellas County Animal Services, including photos of the dogs and cats up for adoption this week, go to our website, pinellascounty.org/animal services. Once again, thanks for listening. I'm Len Szynski with the Pinellas County Communications Department. Join us next time for the Love of Animals.